Ah, is that you, Emily? It's me. 10 years ago, my ex-husband David eloped with my son's wife, and he has been missing ever since. Despite not wanting to even think about those who betrayed my son and me, let alone meet them. I received a call from my ex-husband for the first time in 10 years. And, unbelievably, over the phone, my ex-husband had the audacity to ask me this. "You're living in the family home now, right? I know it's sudden, but could you move out?" I was dumbfounded by my ex-husband's request. After 10 years of no contact, he gets in touch, and for what? To demand the house so he can live with his affair partner? Seeing you're still living there, you haven't remarried, have you? Just move out already. Faced with my ex-husband's further mockery, I felt a surge of anger for the first time in 10 years. Fortunately, he was unaware that my living situation had changed over the past decade. That's why I said, unfortunately, there's no family home to return to anymore. What? After these 10 years, I was determined to make my ex-husband pay. That's what I resolved to do. My name is Emily. I am 60 years old and work as a part-time teacher at a private school. Although I've reached retirement age, my salary has decreased, but I continue to work part-time. Perhaps it's because I have childhood memories of admiring my parents, who were renowned teachers, and growing up watching their backs. I had a husband named David, but we've been divorced for 10 years now. And now, after a long decade, I never thought I would see that man again, especially after such a terrible separation. Yet, his sudden reappearance marked the beginning of this incident. Going back to when I was 21 years old. I met David during our college years while working part-time. I was working at a tutoring school as a part-time instructor, partly to study for my future teaching career. David joined the tutoring school as a new part-time instructor after me. Although David was older, I had been working there longer, and the head of the tutoring school assigned me to support him. As we worked together, we became close, which led to us dating. After dating for 3 years while continuing our part-time jobs, we got married upon graduating from college, and later welcomed our son, Max. By the time Max was born, I had secured a teaching position, so we reported our marriage to the tutoring school we had left and celebrated grandly. 25 years later, Max grew up and was set to marry Sarah, whom he met at a design college in New York. As parents, we were genuinely happy for Max's marriage and spent our days earnestly hoping he would have a wonderful and happy family life. Suddenly, Max contacted us saying, "There's something I want to ask," and returned home. After marriage, Max had been busy with his work as a figure sculptor and hadn't returned home much. So I was excited to welcome him back after so long. However, Max had a troubled look on his face. "Mom, you and Dad are getting along well, right?" "Yes, we are." "Is something wrong?" When I responded, Max hesitated for a moment, then with a determined look, he leaned in closer. "Actually, I saw Dad walking in the city with Sarah the other day." "What?" According to Max, he had witnessed Sarah walking arm in arm with David last Friday night. Moreover, it was near the hotels. On his way home from work, Max witnessed them and, suspicious, followed them right into a hotel. It was unbelievable to hear such a thing suddenly. Indeed, David and Sarah were close, like real parent and child, despite being in-laws. But they were never close enough to meet privately, just the two of them. Let alone in a hotel. It can't be. I wish it were a mistake or just a dream too. But this is proof. Max said, showing me a photo on his phone of two people, resembling David and Sarah, entering a hotel arm in arm. That Friday night, David came home late. He claimed it was overtime at work, but that must have been a blatant lie. Thinking back, I realized that over the past few months, there had been an increase in the number of days David came home late. He had excuses like coworker gatherings, sudden business trips, or working on holidays, and I believed him. But when I calmly thought about it, aside from social gatherings, the sudden increase in business trips, overtime, and working on holidays over these past few months was something I had hardly ever experienced before. It just felt off. Could all those have been excuses to spend time with Sarah? I had Max send me the photo and told him, I'll ask Dad about it, before sending him home for the time being. As I waited for David to return, he arrived home late at night. He seemed to have been drinking, as he was emanating a strong smell of alcohol. Despite the unpleasant smell of liquor, I mustered the courage to confront David directly. "David, I heard from Max this afternoon. Is it true you met with Sarah last Friday?" "Ah. Oh, yeah. We met up and had a chat. I guess." Perhaps sobered by my question, David's eyes began to dart around. Seeing his reaction, I pressed further with my inquiry. "Max also said this. He saw you and Sarah entering a hotel together." As I said this, I showed him the picture Max had sent me. David's eyes widened, he gasped for air, and his gaze darted around as if looking for an escape. After seeing his reaction and feeling certain, David sighed deeply, as if resigning himself. "Damn. I never thought Max would see us. Maybe I got too carried away." "David, don't tell me." "Yeah. No point in making excuses now, I'll confess everything." After speaking as if resigning himself to the situation, David confessed everything. He was swayed by Sarah's invitation and started dating her 6 months ago. And now, he began to tell me that his feelings were almost entirely directed towards Sarah. 6 months ago, that would be 3 years into Max and Sarah's marriage. Had David and Sarah been dating since then? Ignoring my shock and trembling, David continued speaking and ultimately made a cruel confession. "That's the situation, so I want to marry Sarah. Emily, you're out of the picture. Let's get a divorce." Despite my head going blank, I strongly objected, but David was adamant and wouldn't stop. "I just want a divorce. I can't do this with you anymore." Saying so, David didn't come home the next day. Not only that, but all of David's belongings were gone from the house, and a completed divorce paper was left on the table. Furthermore, when I received a call from Max, filled with frustrated tears, saying, "Sarah has left the divorce papers and disappeared," I realized they had no intention of returning. Thus, after David and Sarah eloped and vanished, I was left utterly dumbfounded. That was the end of my marriage to David 10 years ago. After filing for divorce, I sold the house where David and I had lived and moved to a new home I found near my workplace. Initially, I was withdrawn and secluded myself, but as I became engrossed in my work, regardless of my personal struggles, I gradually realized that my emotional wounds had healed. I believe that my heart healed unnoticed because I found my work as a teacher to be fulfilling. Continuing to dedicate myself to a meaningful job, being allowed to stay at the school in a part-time capacity even after retirement, and spending vibrant days with colleagues and students played a significant role. Thus, by making my job and interactions with students my new love, the time I spent fretting over David and Sarah gradually decreased. And then, 10 years later, I was leading a fulfilling life without looking back on the days with David. Even though becoming a part-time teacher meant a decrease in income, staying at the school through my teaching job and being able to meet and spend time with students who looked up to me like a parent was enough. Hearing that Max had thrown himself into his work and managed to recover from the shock of his father and wife's betrayal, I felt relieved. However, one phone call shattered the peace I had found. "Hello? Ah, Emily? It's me, David." "What?" "David." Hearing my ex-husband's voice for the first time in 10 years. I never thought I'd hear it again, and I involuntarily raised my voice in surprise. "What do you want after all this time? You're not calling to reminisce about old times, are you?" My words came out sharper than I intended. It was understandable, though. The last time David and I had spoken was a decade ago, and back then, no matter how much I reasoned with him, he was adamant about getting a divorce. Unaware of my efforts to maintain composure and suppress my emotions as I recall such events, David said this. "Hey, now, isn't that a bit cold? Saying that to your husband who reached out to you after 10 years, don't you think that's not right? You're forgetting ex-husband. I don't think of you as my husband anymore, and I certainly don't want to see or even hear your voice." All right, then let's get to the point. You're living in the family home now, right? I know it's sudden, but can you move out?" "What?" With an insensitivity that bordered on flippancy, I struggled to comprehend the barrage of words thrown at me, unable to contain my emotions, and found myself raising my voice once again. Despite my confusion and shaking with anger, David continued speaking. Sarah's pregnant. Kids are more expensive than I thought. Things have been getting tight. According to David's detailed account, it appears that despite a 30-year age difference, he and Sarah eloped and got married. And he says they have lived as a very loving couple. However, everything changed when Sarah got pregnant last year. Before eloping, David and Sarah abruptly quit their jobs, complicating their ability to secure positions at reputable companies because of their work histories. As a result, they took on multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck. Amid these challenges, Sarah's pregnancy and subsequent childbirth meant she had to stop working, significantly straining their financial situation. I just can't handle it anymore, so I thought about asking Max for help or going back to my folks. However, Max shut the door on me. And my folks have disowned me as well. Everyone's just so stubborn. As David chuckled over the phone, the faces of his parents and younger brother, whom I had met before our marriage, came to mind. His father seemed strict, his mother appeared to have a strong core, and his younger brother looked serious. After the divorce, we never kept in touch, but I couldn't imagine them forgiving such an infidelity, running away with their son's wife. So you're saying you want to move in here? Yeah. Seeing you're still in the family home, I guess you haven't remarried, right? A single woman with nothing but her teaching career is less important than a daughter having your grandchild. Just move out. His crude words made my anger boil over. Had I idealized David too much in my memories over these 10 years? I never thought he could be this irresponsible. And at the same time, recalling something, I spoke in a hushed tone. Unfortunately, there's no family home anymore. What? My father passed away 3 years ago, and my mother last year. The family home was too big for me alone, so I decided to sell it. There's no house left for you, David. What? Now it was David's turn to raise his voice. Besides, I have no intention of telling you where I live now, and even if you found out, you wouldn't be allowed in. So, never come here. Dead, you say? Then what about the inheritance? If the parents are dead, the house and money should go to you, right? David's words, focusing only on the financial aspects following my parents' death, made me frown in disgust and anger. By the looks of it, while discussing the reliance on my family home and such, they were likely plotting all along not only to take my money but also to seize my parents' inheritance. But that was counting one's chickens before they're hatched, and now it was too late. All the money from my parents' inheritance, along with the family home, went to me. My parents said they wouldn't leave a single penny to a shameless man who eloped with his son's wife. What? Going back to the day I divorced David, 10 years ago. Upon hearing about David and Sarah's betrayal from Max and me, my parents were furious. It's no wonder they were angry. David had been treated like a real son and trusted by my parents ever since before we were married. Only to betray that trust by eloping with his son's wife and hurting both his son and wife in the worst possible way. The first thing my parents did during their lifetime was to sort out the inheritance and prepare a will. They prepared a will to ensure that everything, including the family home, would be inherited by me, in case David and Sarah ever came back. 7 years passed since then, and my father passed away, followed by my mother last year, and I inherited the family home and the estate. The family home was too large for me to live in alone, and while I didn't want to part with a house filled with memories of my parents, I decided to sell it, honoring their wishes. I hoped it would be put to good use by someone with good sense, rather than being handed over to the likes of David and Sarah. Hearing this reality, David's anger exploded over the phone. Don't mess with me, damn it. Don't talk nonsense. That can't be allowed. There's nothing about being allowed or not. I legally inherited everything through the proper procedures. You and Sarah, who did nothing and just wandered around as you please, have no say in this. Even as I responded, David, possibly enraged to the point of losing sense, showered me with vile abuse before slamming the phone down. And I just stared down at my suddenly silent phone. After abandoning others for their own selfish reasons, they come back seeking help and lash out when things don't go their way. I never thought the man I had spent several years with could be so irresponsible and childish. Just as I was filled with utter contempt, to my surprise, I received a call from Sarah, Despite being related by marriage, she accused me one-sidedly of being heartless for not informing her about my parents' deaths, claiming she hadn't heard about it and chastising me for not telling her. She yelled, but it didn't affect me at all. If Sarah is truly shocked by the loss of my parents, one might expect her to express a wish to pay her respects or request a visit to their resting place. However, there was no hint that Sarah on the other end of the phone would bring up such matters, from her second sentence. It was clear as day that all she thought about was the inheritance, the money. No way, neither this woman nor David will be allowed near our parents' altar. With that thought in mind, I hung up on Sarah abruptly before she could finish speaking. Then, I received a call from Max. "Mom? It's me. Have Dad and Sarah come to you?" "No. It was just a phone call about the family home and the inheritance, you know." Hearing my answer, Max sighed over the phone. "I see. They came directly to my place before, so I thought they might, but it looks like they ended up calling you after all." "Max. Are you okay? Did they do anything to you?" "It's okay, Mom. They just banged on our door and made a big fuss. As soon as I said I'd call the cops, they scampered off." But changing the subject, "I've got an idea," Max said, and then shared his thoughts with me. Hearing his plan, I decided to cut ties with David and Sarah once and for all, for my sake and to protect my son, who had started a new life. A few days after putting the plan into action, I received a frantic call from David. "Hey, Emily. Is this also your work? What a rude way to start a conversation. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. These women have just stormed into our place." "Which women?" According to David, 7 women had barged into the apartment where he and Sarah lived. These women were David's mistresses, and it turned out that David had been cheating not only with Sarah but with 7 other young women. This wasn't just a case of double or triple timing, it was an 8 timing situation. Moreover, Sarah was unaware that she was one of the 8 until the uproar caused by these women made her realize it, leading to her furiously confronting David. "I never imagined there would be other women besides Sarah, and to think there are 7 of them, I'm astonished. It must be you, right? How on earth did you find out about my secret?" "Well, how would I know? There's nothing I need to tell or explain to an ex-husband who ran off with another woman 10 years ago." "What did you say?" David raged on the phone, hurling more insults, but they didn't bother me. Soon, an irate Sarah confronted him over the phone, and they started a huge argument, forgetting all about me. Is this what they call a MS? So, not sure if he could hear me or not, I threw one last remark at my ex-husband. "Goodbye, David. I'll make sure not to forget you. So please, never show up in front of me or my son again." With that, I hung up the phone. The commotion caused by these women, in fact, was Max's plan. After being confronted by David and Sarah at his home and driving them away, Max immediately hired a detective agency to investigate them. It turned out that David was involved with various women, leading to the discovery of 7 other women connected to him. Furthermore, 3 of these 7 women were revealed to be married. Max promptly shared this information with me and even provided the current address of David and Sarah's apartment, which the detective agency had found. Max and I then anonymously informed the 7 women of David and Sarah's whereabouts, directing them all to confront the couple simultaneously. The ensuing chaos at David and Sarah's apartment escalated to the point where the police had to intervene. As expected, David's relationship with Sarah ended, and he was left with a lot of debt from spending money on 8 women. The amount of debt exceeded $10,000. David lost Sarah, his home, and his money, and has since been living as a homeless person in a park, where a coworker spotted him participating in a food distribution. Sarah had a habit of spending lavishly and thus had a large credit card loan. She had no choice but to cover the costs through borrowing. But shockingly, her source of loan turned out to be from unscrupulous lenders. Shortly after taking the loan, she was forcibly taken away by intimidating men in a car, and her whereabouts have since been unknown. Having resolved the situation with David and Sarah after 10 years, I returned to my peaceful daily life. While still single, the fulfilling and vibrant days at school are more than enough for me. I also heard that Max has since met a woman with a child who shares a similar background, and they are now in a relationship with marriage in mind. I sincerely hope he finds new happiness and a fresh start in life.